Betul.
I can figure it out, right? So it's for either one business unit or one business and its competitors, right? The second one is slightly different. It's what we call growth share. On the y-axis, you have future market growth, and on the x-axis, you have relative market. Okay. Did that make sense? Okay, so now we see there are several frameworks that we think about, right? One is ROS RMS. It is for either one business unit or one company versus its competitors. So if I
What did he say?
It is for either one business unit or one company versus its competitors. So if I take, for example, I can plot a Tokopedia, a Bukalapak. So if I take, for example, I can plot one company, RMS. It is for either one business unit or one company versus its competitors. So if I take, for example, I can plot a Tokopedia, a Bukalapak, a Shopee, a Lazada, a Zalora, whoever on this page, and I can say what does that mean? Or I can plot a telecom cell, an Indosat, a tree, a smart friend, and I can say where they are, and I can figure it out, right? So it's for either one business unit or one business and its competitors, right? The second one is slightly different. It's what we call growth share. On the y-axis, you have future market growth, and on the x-axis, you have relative market share. This is basically comparing the various business units within my company, right? So I could take various categories. If I was an e-commerce company, I could take the various categories and say, I'm very good in fashion, and fashion has a high potential for growth, whereas, I don't know, pens or stationery is very low RMS and very low future growth rate, so I shouldn't be focusing on that. So it allows me to look at a portfolio, right? So the difference between the first one and the second one is in the first one, I'm looking at company performance or business unit performance. On the second one, I'm looking at portfolio within my company, right? If I was a venture capital firm, I'm putting my various investment companies on this matrix, and I'm saying company A, high RMS, high future growth, that's where I want to continue to invest in. Here's a company where their RMS is very low, the future growth potential is low, I'm not going to invest in that company, right? So it's a portfolio management tool. And the third one is what we call market growth versus company growth. And that gives me the view of saying, why is it that some businesses in my company are underperforming the market? What is it that company A, who is in that same business, is doing significantly better than me? So the market growth is good. I need to do something to improve my performance. Whereas there could be another business that the market growth is very low, but I'm doing very well. And I need to be conscious that therefore in the future, the growth of that business is going to go down because the market is flattening out. So I need to diversify my activities, right? So it's super important to remember these three things. One is looking at, in my competitive space, how am I doing and how can I improve? The second one is within my portfolio, how do I reassign resources? And the third one is, what does it mean for the future of my business? Right. So I will pause there. Lena, do you want to add anything to this?
No, Kira, nothing from me. Thank you.
Okay. Any thoughts, any questions on, because I think these 2-3 fundamentals are very simple, but very, very powerful. So any questions or any observations, please let me know.
I want to ask questions, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, it's simple. Because I see there are a specific number there on the graphic. Is it what it called? Berlaku. Is it for?
Is it refilled? Is it applicable for
all? Is it applicable for all companies or different industries? We have a different graphic.
Very, very good question. You calculate RMS based on business definition. You define your business definition, and then you take the companies in your industry definition, and you calculate the RMS. It's different for every industry.
Yeah. So how do we know the ideal one? I mean the white area there. Now, how do we know we are in the white area and not in the gray area? Because different industry have a different graph.
Yes, different industries have different graphs. So the question is, how do you know you're in the normative area?
Yes, that's my
Yeah.
question.
Okay, so the way you know you're in the normative area, Akbar, is if your business definition is right, there usually is some kind of a linear relationship between ROS and RMS. And so you always see, so this slope that you see, I don't want to get it very mathematical because I don't know if everybody will be on the same page, but this could be like this. It could be like this. It could be like this. But in all cases, it's a linear relationship. Right? And so the way we kind of make sure that the normative area is the right area is we look at, it holds true for industries across multiple geographies, across multiple years. That normative band doesn't shift too much. Right? So you have to do it for each industry, hopefully over multiple years. And you'll see that the normative band stays. So your top companies kind of stay in that band all the time. Very good question.
I see. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Maaf, Kelvin.
Kelvin.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Kelvin.
I'm Kelvin from Afar. I have a question. How we make a position for our business to this grab if the business that we run in the industry that many business unit in their industry. For example, Maver is running business in traveling. It's kind of travel agency. I think so many travel agency assisting in Indonesia. So how we listing all of them and put them all of them in the grab? How we know their market share and all? How we know their market share in exactly number like this graph? Thank you.
Yeah. So the one thing I'm not going to cover in a lot of detail is specific questions around how you estimate it for every industry, right? We'll talk about it, right? We'll talk about it, but I won't talk about it today. But what we do typically, Kelvin, and it's a very good question. It's a very practical question, right? It's a very practical question because when an industry only has 2 or 3 players, it's easy to plot. When an industry has hundreds of players, how do you plot? And the way my response is, what really matters in most industries is the plot between the largest few players, right? Typically, your normative band is defined by the largest companies operating in your industry, right? And so if you plot the largest companies that are operating in your industry, and then you plot yourself, you know where you lie relative to those large players, right? And it's a good question because as part of strategy, sometimes realizing that in a very, very fragmented industry, individual small companies will never be able to be in the normative band is a realization of strategy in itself. Because if you realize that scale is so critical for you to be part of this normative band, then the strategy that you build towards is consolidation. right? Because then the question you ask is, how do you as a company consolidate many, many small companies so that the collective unit gives you the scale to become one of the companies in your normative band? Or that if you're a very, very small player, are there other companies that are consolidating? So you sell out to those companies so that you have an opportunity for one entity to make it to the normative band. I'll take an example, right? Because you're all very young, right? I'm 42, so I have a lot more, a bit more experience than you. In Indonesia, if you go back and look at in 2010, 2012, how many e-commerce companies were there? At one point in time, there were 41 e-commerce companies, right? Today, how many are there? 4, 5?
5.
Yeah, because the market is consolidated, right? Because you found out that unless you're a Bukalapak or you're a Tokopedia, you cannot be on this normative band. The really, really small companies and have had no way to survive. And so they've all had to come together or switch off or shut down because they just don't have the scale to ever be part of this normative band. So that realization in itself is a contribution to strategy, right? Okay, that's good questions. Couple of really good questions, guys. Akbar, did you have another question?
Yes, maybe I want to ask a little about, can we make LS or IMS based on other competitors' market capitalizations, maybe? And if can, and how?
I'm not sure I heard you there, Akbar. Your voice is echoing a bit.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm in a cafe right now because it's kind of hard to find a signal.
That's okay. What was the question again?
Oh yeah, so if I want to make an ROS or an RMS, can I use market capitalization? I mean, based on market capitalization, or maybe the other. And if I can, based on market capitalization, how?
So you can, the question is, can I use market capitalization instead of return on sales?
Instead of return,
No.
instead RMS, right?
Instead of RMS, no, you cannot. Because your market cap typically is a function of your return on sales more than it is of your RMS in listed companies, which is why most companies will report their EBITDA as a proxy of their valuation. That's one. Two is your market cap already factors in both these metrics, right? Your market cap is an outcome of your market position and your profitability. So you cannot use market cap. Things that you can use instead of RMS are customer share, you can use, right? Revenue share, you can use. So if you take the revenue number of all the companies in a specific market, you add that up and you find your company's share of that total revenue pool. You can use that as a revenue share, right? Those are the proxies that you typically use. You don't use market cap. All right. Okay, so this is one that you might have already seen. This is the growth share matrix. What you're seeing in the middle here is what this is. This you might have seen in some other way or in another definition. But the way that we kind of think about this is it takes a portfolio, right? So your company has multiple products or you're a venture capital firm and you have multiple investments, and you plot
Sorry,
each.
Kiran, there is Reno.
Oh, go for it, Reno. Go for it, Reno.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to ask, as part of defining strategy, should we anticipate any black swan events? Or, yeah, so we tend to forecast growth, but we don't anticipate any black swan.
Yes.
So,
It's a very, very good question. The point is, empirically, it is very difficult for you to predict occurrence of any significant disruption as you think about it, right? As you think about strategy, it's very, very different, very, very difficult, right? No, if you ask anybody 10 years ago, they would not have said that there was a smartphone and that everybody would do everything online, right? So such events, the way we kind of think about these events, Reno, is once you've done this assessment, then you add a scenario analysis lens. We will talk about it subsequently, right? And then when you do your scenario analysis, that's when you factor in black swan events, right? And you assign a probability to that event, and then you factor that into your strategy, right? But you wouldn't bake that into your base case.
okay.
Right? So that's kind of how you think about it.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay. So on the growth share, you might have seen this before. What you do is, this is a portfolio evaluation tool. You either plot all the products you have, all the business units you have, or if you're a venture fund, you plot all your investments on this, and then you take a call. I won't spend a lot of time on it. It's fairly straightforward. But what's important, the point I wanted to make was, why do you have future market share and relative market share for the axis? And the reason why we think the future market share is an important thing is it gives you an idea of what the future market potential is, right? And here it gives you the ability to build multiple scenarios, including scenarios of disruption, which gives you an idea of how you treat your market share. So that's why kind of we added that lens of a future market growth to that. And so typically, if you look at any existing business, you see, this is our empirical data. Bain's done a lot of work with a lot of companies, and we typically see that there are 2 or 3% of your business that are stars, and you want to maintain share for these businesses because the future market potential is very high, and you want to start moving them towards a higher market share. You have 2 to 3% of your businesses as cash cows. You want to maintain position and you want to hold the share, but you know that there's not a lot of future growth in these businesses. So you want to build the stars or want to invest in question marks. Question marks typically account for about 5% of the businesses, and they are businesses where there's a significant potential for growth, and you have a significant but the relative market share is very low. So you want to figure out whether you want to gain share in that business or whether you want to decide for an exit. And then dogs, which typically account for a very large proportion of the business, are low market share, low growth. These are the businesses that you want to exit. So that's one framework that you could use. So what I'm going to do now is, we've spoken about the 2 boxes on top, business definition and company definition. I'm going to skip the 5 C's because the subsequent sessions are going to go into detail on each of these. And what I wanted to do today was talk about industry context, because there were some questions about how do I know the market share of all the players in my market, and all those questions, which are very relevant questions to ask. So how do we think about the industry context? And the way we kind of do this is, as difficult as it is, once you've defined what business you play in, you want to be able to build a view of what the total market size is of your addressable piece of business. The chart is very self-explanatory, but what it means is for each of the market segments that you operate in, on a total revenue pool of 100, what are the various companies and where does your company stand relative to competition across each of these segments you operate in? Now, we have realized that companies don't spend enough time doing this. And when you don't spend enough time building a market map, you don't know what segments are core to your business. And so managements spend a lot of time on segments where they are underperforming without realizing that that part of the business doesn't contribute to a lot of value for them. So rather than focusing on the parts of the business that actually are contributing, companies tend to spend time on things that are not contributing, and that just takes, they lose their position even in businesses where they are overperforming. So the first thing in your industry scope that you do is build a market size that shows very, very clearly where your company operates across the various market segments that you compete in. How do you go about doing this? I think to answer, I don't know who asked the question on, Mavis, I think it was Kevin, we have so many competitors. So the first one is to establish the right definition, right? Are you including all the right competitors? And then to test that, to validate that, whether they have similar costs, similar customers, similar capabilities, so that on that market map, you're only picking the companies that are competing directly with you. So at the surface, they might look like there's 1,500 travel agencies, but if you actually define those travel agencies, are these the real travel agencies that are competing with? I focus on international travel, luxury hotels. Are the competitors I'm comparing myself against in that bucket? I compete only in domestic business travel in the top 5 cities of Indonesia. Am I comparing myself with the right set of competitors? There's no point in me comparing myself.
Wait.
With all 100 of them, right? So establish the right business definition is step one. Step two then is gather as much top-down estimates as is possible. So you have a view of mapping out all the segments that you have. 3 is then gather estimates of who your top competitors are by segment. 4 is look at a multi-year view of this. Has it changed? Has it remained constant? Why have there been competitors, new competitors that have come in? Why has there been competitors that have disappeared? Try and get down to it. And then finally, draw implications on what it actually means. What segments do I need to focus on? What tactics do you need to actually do? I protect share? Do I increase share? So on, right? So that's kind of the typical set of steps that you undertake. And then once you've done that, then you say, what are the various steps in the value chain in the industry that I operate in, right? And I'm going to take an example for agriculture. In agriculture, it could start from equipment, so people that make tractors, to the technology infrastructure, the ones that actually provide the infrastructure for segments, etc. 3 is fertilizers. 4 could be inputs like seeds, chemicals, etc. And 5 is retail, right? That's the first step. Identify the various components. The second is identify those segments of the value chain that have a specific advantage. Let me pause there, and I think it's important for us to understand that, because you might be playing across different parts of your value chain. The question is, how much advantage do you have in that specific value chain that you play off? I'm going to pause there, and I want to make sure that you understand that. Why is it that we're looking at value chain, and why is it that we're trying to identify what part of the value chain is critical? It's pretty clear. So whatever business you do, identifying the various steps of the value chain and identifying where does the power actually sit, right? So in this case, retailers exert a significant influence in the market because they control the customer. They're extremely close to the customer, right? So that's why it's important. It's also important to the point that somebody asked about the black swan cases, so that you're at least aware of where potential disruptions can happen, that before you can define the value chain of any industry. So if I continue with agriculture, you defined it as equipment maker, fertilizer, seeds, retailers. Over time, that value chain changed because a new part of that value chain came in, which is the tech infrastructure, right? Suddenly, the value of the standalone equipment becomes significantly less important relative to the technology in itself, which means in the future, that technology bubble is going to grow, right? So the new technology infrastructure is going to become more and more important because it provides immediate efficiency and it's significantly reshaping that industry. Better data now from that sensor, it's not differentiated, right? So it reduces the profit margins for those that are input for the producers. So understanding exactly what that shift in the value chain is and how it impacts your revenue pool becomes a critical element in for you to understand, define what the strategy is. I won't go through this in the interest of time. I'm conscious we only have 10 minutes. But what I wanted to do was to show you that there is a clear view from this is a case of what we did. What I did want to do before I stop and pause and leave for questions at least 10 minutes is introduce the point of tipping point. And this slide doesn't do justice, right? So I will bring a better slide next time to share a view on what tipping point is. Tipping point is basically a way of thinking about any industry and say, as you learn experience and you gain scale, there is a higher benefit or a higher probability that you would succeed, and therefore you would derive a higher return on investment than others in that business. In the startup world, this concept of tipping point has become even more critical, right? We looked at industries across multiple countries, across multiple segments, across multiple products. And what we realize is that in the new digital world, the concept of tipping point is even more critical than it was in the past, right? So earlier, you could still have some companies that operate despite the fact that there are some very, very large players. In our digital world, the concept of winner takes all has become completely relevant, right? So if you look, I will share with you on the next session, if you look at the number of companies that are present in the pipeline in any of our digital industries initially, it's hundreds of them, right? But over time, they reduce quite significantly to 3 to 5 companies that take everything. Therefore, the right strategy becomes extremely important, right? And so that's basically what I wanted to communicate from a point of view of tipping point. I will not cover customers today. We will leave it for the other session because I won't do justice to it. So I just wanted to pause there. Our session was, we have 8 more minutes, but I want to make sure that I have enough time to take questions from everybody before we close. So I'll come off the slide share. Anything that we shared today, just want to summarize what we covered today. We covered business definition. We spoke about why it's important to do the business definition. Then we spoke about once you've done that business definition, how do you assess your company and where it stands relative to the business that you've defined and the implications of what that means. And finally, we covered the box below, which is the context of saying, how do we look at this in the industry context? The next few sessions, we'll talk about the C's and go into a bit more detail on each of that. Let me pause there and hand back to Ibu Mariati or Bunne, and then take any questions anybody has.
Thank you so much, Kiran. Wow, that's I think we have a very heavy discussion this morning, but this is very, very insightful. Okay, so we have questions from Akbar, for Star Fan. So Akbar, probably you want to tell Kiran about your startup first.
You're on mute, Akbar.
Yeah.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So my startup is we're currently a startup that's focusing on agro-industrial distributing, and we are especially in export and import. And currently, we are developing a fresh fruit storage without a cold storage, and prolong the life of the fruit, fresh fruit, for up to 2 months. And the question is the tipping point that you said before is the same as the tipping point below? And if it does, I still don't understand.
Your voice is breaking.
Oh yeah, and if it's the same, I don't know. When do we know that we have reached the tipping point?
Yeah,
that's kind of hard.
Yeah, congratulations on your startup. It sounds like a fabulous idea. I'd like to know more. The definition of a tipping point has changed significantly, Akbar, right? What we have seen is the amount of capital has gone up exponentially in the quest for a faster tipping point. And so the curve has reduced in terms of timing across sectors. What we're also starting to see is what that tipping point forces is a decrease in the number of companies that operate in any space substantially, right? And so the one thing that you need to be able to do for your business is, if you think about the ROS RMS slide, the ROS part of it for you is less relevant, right? The RMS part of it is extremely relevant. So having a very, very clear definition of who your competitors are and what is your relative market share is going to be the single most critical driver to tipping point in your business. And so if you aren't already doing it, I would do it quickly, because for me, the tipping point in the space that you operate in is at any point in time, if you're less than 0.6 in terms of RMS, your chance and likelihood of actually getting to tipping point decreases considerably. And so you want to be monitoring your RMS aggressively.
So it's still, I need to still monitor it.
Absolutely. You absolutely do.
Okay, thank you for the answer, sir.
There is Hagata from Campus U.
Hi, sir. Thank you. I want to ask a bit about the chart about the ROS RMS one. I think I understand most of the stuff that have been said. Maybe what I wanted to ask is, it's more of a practicality matter. It's more of a practical matter. Like, for example, given that this chart is based on current conditions, right? In status quo, for example, if I analyze and make this chart in October, that means it was the data in October, right? My question would be, in a startup that is fairly new and young, what's the time frame for us to update it again? For example, to see the progress, would it be quarterly, annually, or maybe that's my question. Should it be based on time alone, or should it be based on our intrinsic changes or milestone? Then after we made certain milestone, then we update the chart that we made firsthand before we conduct the new strategy.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So a couple of things. In a startup, in the startup world, Agatha, ROS sometimes is less relevant than growth, right? So my first suggestion to you is consider, especially from a startup perspective, to redo that framework and think about future growth versus RMS as you look at your business. That's my first suggestion, right? So change the ROS RMS to use future market growth versus RMS as a basis of analysis. That's one. Two is the reason why you're using those metrics, whether it's ROS, whether it's RMS, whether it's future growth, is because it is not an internally looking metric. It's an external metric, right? It doesn't matter what you did. What matters is what the outcome of that action was. And these metrics give you a view of that, right? So to answer your question, you should not base, when you look at that slide, based on intrinsic changes that you've made to your business. What you should do is, if you already have a set of dashboards that you monitor, if there's already a set of companies that you are monitoring, plot that. Maybe it is once a quarter to start initially, at least, because I don't know how rapid the changes are in your industry, right? But if you plot the same chart between 2 quarters, and you see that the position of the major competitors or your position on that chart has changed significantly, even between just 2 quarters, then you want to do it more frequently. But if it doesn't, then you want to be able to say, okay, if my position doesn't change quarter to quarter, then maybe it's better to do it half yearly. right? So I think it's really a question of you experimenting with it to try and see where, when, how long does it take to actually have meaningful changes, right? But typically what we see is even in established companies, a quarterly performance evaluation is worthwhile doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think we are coming to the end of the sessions, but before that, we are going to have one participants to conclude the whole sessions for today. Yeah, so we have Nikita. Nikita from Created.
Nikita is left the Zoom.
Okay, so her friend probably, Risma.
Risma Hansa.
Risma Kanza.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not good in English.
It's okay. It's okay. Just try.
I think there's no question for me.
Yeah. Can you conclude what we have learned? Just 1 or 2 sentences are enough.
And feel free to do it in Bahasa.
Yeah. Just feel free to do it in Bahasa Indonesia. It's okay. Later I will translate it. Yeah.
Risma.
Risma. Okay. Yeah.
You can go.
Risma, are you there?
Okay. Speaking. Arif, want to share your thought?
Okay. So I'd like to have catch up in this session. So the first one is we can establish very detailed and correct definition by our company from the market, core of business, and situation to identify the most useful strategic for the future. Then we can segment the total market and emphasize the sales of top competitors by segment them. Then check the major changes from the previous market and also draw the implication where we will focus on creating the strategy for our business. That's all.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay,
Very
thank
good.
you so much.
Before we close, Mariati, right? Before we close, the one request I have is this is our first session. So for
the future. Okay. So I'd like to have catch up in this session. So the first one is we can establish very detailed and correct definition by our company from the market, core of business, and situation. A correct definition by our company from the market, core of business, and situation to identify the we can establish very detailed and correct definition by our company. We can establish very detailed and correct definition.
And corrected.
By our company from the market, core of business, and situation to identify the most useful strategic core of business and situation to identify the
most useful strategic establish very detailed and correct definition by our company from the market, core of business and situation to identify the most useful strategic for the future. Then we can segment by our company from the market, core of business and situation to identify the most useful strategic for the future. Then we can segment that by our company from the market, core of business and situation to identify the most useful strategic for the future. Then we can segment the total market and emphasize the sales of top competitors by segment them. Then check the major changes from the previous market and also draw the implication where we will focus on creating the strategy for our business.
You can segment the market.
Of business and situation to identify the most useful strategic for the future. Then we can segment the total market and emphasize the sales of top competitors by segment them. Then check the major changes from the previous market and also draw the implication where we will focus on that. And also draw the implication where we will focus on creating the strategy for our business. That's all.
Okay.
Very good. For our business. That's all.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Very
Thank
good.
you so much.
Before we close, Mariati, right? Before we close, the one request I have is this is our first session. So can you please let Mariati or Bune or anybody know any feedback on the session, what we can do to make it better? If you think my English is too fast, I mean, we'll try and see if we can, I mean, Lina can play a more active role because she can speak in Bahasa Indonesia, and we can tag team the presentation if that's required. If there's any feedback, please do let me know, because I think this is I'm keen to make this as interesting as is possible for you.
Thank you so much, Kiran.
Thank
I think this is one of the most interesting sessions I've ever learned, and we have learned so much today.
So fucking much, man.
Therefore, we can develop a strategy. Who do I focus on? What do they want?
Orang kan. Waited for a century. Lesson learned. Turn and face question. Sawi. Tidak peduli. Pantes naon lagi. Lagi ini anjir. Kayak lucu.
How do I win them? Where can I capture them? Right? So everything revolves around that basis of what the segmentation is. Right? Why do we need it? We need it because we want to be able to tailor our value proposition to the very, very specific needs of that customer segment that we want to focus on. Understand and define very clearly the profit potential. Why are we doing all of this? We're doing all of this to get to full potential, right? Let's not lose focus on that. We're doing everything we're doing to get to full potential. So in order for us to get to that full potential, we need to be able to define very upfront what the profit potential is from that customer segment. And then reassess, do we have the right assets and capabilities for serving some customer segments, or can we go after all customer segments, right? And then redefine your strategy towards achieving full potential. So that is what customer segmentation is. That's why companies need it. So in the end, what does it actually do? It takes every segment that you build and it builds a holistic strategy around targeting that segment, right? How broad should my product portfolio be so that it meets the needs of that customer segment? What specific product features are required? How do I price the product, right? What are the various service options available? How do I distribute it? How do I promote it? What should be my branding and positioning strategy be? What should my advertising strategy be? What should my retention strategy be? So you see how all elements of your strategy need to be tailored to a segment, right? Let's take an example and try and make it very real. Let's take an example of a luxury product, right? Let's say a luxury car. The segment definition that they have will inform what kind of models should they be focusing on, right? What features are their customers looking for, right? Versus a not premium luxury car. So let's take an example, right? If that's the company, what kind of products should they have, right? They have cars, which everybody knows is a premium product. Can they get into other products where they can still capture some of that premiumness? In the example of Porsche, they've gotten into watches, right? They've gotten into clothing, right? But it's defined on who a Porsche customer is, right? What features should they have in the cars that they produce, in the watches that they produce? They define premium pricing. I do not want to price it below, because if I price it below, the perception of the quality of the product is affected. So I will not price it below, right? How do I ensure service options maintain that premium segment feel? How do I ensure that when you walk into a Porsche distribution center, it feels like a premium outlet versus, I don't know, a Hyundai or one of the other car brands? How do I revolve my promotions so that it maintains that premium feel? How do I ensure that my branding, my positioning, my advertising, and my retention strategy is based on that segment that I want to target, right? Any product, right? So I will give you all a couple of minutes, and if you kind of think about a product, can one of you take an example of a product and just walk through others how that brand or that company has made sure that their target segment, customer segment, has been addressed across these portfolio of strategies? Does anybody want to take an example? Maybe a nice Indonesian example? Indomie. Who can tell me how Indomie thinks about this? Or any product that you want. Link aja. Anyone?
Mom, there is nothing wrong with your talk,
Absolutely.
or you can share in bahasa. It's okay.
That's also fine. Absolutely is.
Maybe we can take a quiz, bro. I'm bored. Just to watch the video. I don't know, because I I don't really understand business stuff or fuck, bro. Customer appreciation. Did I take the quiz yet? Or no? No. Wish me luck, bro. I think we can do a market research, bro. Customer acquisition. Define the target, audience, build brand awareness, car offer discount. Upaya untuk mempertahankan pelanggan yang sudah pernah membeli produkmu agar terus melakukannya. Disebut customer retention itu sih. I think it's it, bro. Ya, bro, ini customer retention, bro. Mempertahankan pelanggan, bro. Ranking teratas dalam pencarian CEO, bro. Oh, bos CEO, bos itu CEO ya. Nah, teratas nih, maksudnya CEO, bro. Nah, search engine marketing ini, what the fuck, bro. I never heard that. Cara untuk menarik kembali pelanggan yang sudah berhenti menjadi pelanggan Anda. Engagement maybe. Revenue model menawarkan produk standar secara gratis disebut freemium itu sih. Oh, freemium. Aku krungune free meal, anjir. My bad. Apakah kunci sukses meningkatkan pendapatan? Strategi of course, target market. adalah satu, structure proses. Dan bagaimana cara menghitung pendapatan dalam menjual barang, harga barang yang terjual, rata-rata barang. Upaya optimasi harga yang sebelumnya sudah ditentukan disebut optimasi harga. Maybe I think is yet market management, bro. Cara meningkatkan pendapatan. Terkode lah. Let's see what we got here. Oh shit, man! It's nearly 100. So proud, bro. I'm very, very clever.
No one? Okay, we can come back to it and revisit it again after we go through the pack, and then you can have some time to think about an example that you want to share. Okay, so what are the steps? How do we go about building a customer segmentation, right? The first thing is the actual segmentation, right? How do I fit a base of a very, very large set of customers into a homogeneous group? How do I group them? First question, right? And in my experience, the challenge happens when people go ahead and define groups based on pure subjective opinion, right? I think this is a segment, and therefore I'm going to name it a segment. Do all of you have a math background or no? Some of you may have, some of you may not have. I assume that many of you are engineering students, so probably do have some level of math background. But there are many tools, right? Mathematical tools that help you group it, right? For example, there's something called cluster analysis, right? What does cluster analysis do? Cluster analysis takes a set of dependent variables and tries to see if I plot two customers or two products or anything, how close are they across those variables? And those customers that are closest in terms of the set of attributes are one segment, right? We did an interesting study inside of Bain. We plotted all our consultants on a cluster analysis profile against our family members, right? And the results showed that I am closer on a set of dependent attributes to another Bain consultant than I am with my own brother, right? So it just shows that if you don't use accurate tools to try and group, you might assume that everybody in the same household has similar needs or similar psychographics or similar behaviors, but it's not true, right? For some products, right? So it's extremely important as you segment the customers to use a very, very objective tool to segment your customers, right? I think that's bullet point 1. 2 is, and we will share a framework on how you choose your segments. The most common mistake that we have seen with companies is that they try and address all segments without thinking about whether that segment is attractive, without thinking about whether the company has the ability to serve that customer. So I'll give you a framework today in terms of how we could think about selecting the right segments. And if your company strategy is such that you have picked the wrong segment to target, you need to be able to change your strategy accordingly, right? Or change the segment that you're focusing on. The third element then is, once you've picked the segment or segments that you want to focus on, build your product or service value proposition and the go-to-market strategy tailored 100% to that segment, right? Go back every time to the customer segment, ask the question about what does that segment really need, and does the product or service that you are offering meet and solve a fundamental issue or a problem that the customer has? Because if it's not, then there's no point, then the product is going to fail, right? So your value proposition will not work. And then finally, let's not lose focus on full potential. Let's then go back and say, okay, all this is great. I'm gaining access to my customer segment. My value proposition is working, but does it help me achieve my profit potential, my full potential, right? So those are the 4 steps I want each of you to do for your own companies as you think about customer segmentation. Let's go one by one, right? The 3 most common, there are many ways to segment a customer, by the way, right? These are not the only 3. You can do psychographics-based segmentation. You can do pure usage-based segmentation. There's many ways to do it. Today, I will talk about the 3 most common forms of segmentation that I use. And in my experience in real life, the best segmentation approach that works is a combination of one or more of these 3 approaches, right? Now I'll start from the right because it's the easiest to understand, it's the easiest to explain, called demographic or firmographic segmentation. Demographics are very, very clear. When I look at an individual, when I just get the basic facts from that individual, I get information that is pertaining to their demographics, right? So if I just go to BPS and I pull your statistics, national statistics or your census reports or whatever, I get access to your demographic information. It's the most basic form of demographic information, right? How old or young are you? I can group people into less than 12 years old, 12 to 15 years old, 15 to 25 years old, 25. This is how our vaccination schedules are being determined, right? So pure demographic. It could be, are you in a high income segment? Are you in a medium income segment? Are you in a low income segment? And I have products and services and value proposition differently. Are you a renter? Do you own a home? How much tax do you pay? Do you work for a company that is more than 500 people? Do you work in a company that has a large revenue?
Silahkan Mbak Lina.
Oke, halo teman-teman, selamat pagi semuanya. Mungkin yang masih belum di kamera bisa turn on the camera, so it's as Bunai said, supaya lebih interaktif ya. Mungkin sebelum mulai saya memperkenalkan sendiri. Nama saya Lina. Saya sekarang manager di Bain based in Singapore. Asalnya sih dari Bandung, tapi udah lama di Singapura jadi bahasanya udah kaku ya. Jadi mohon maaf kalau nggak ngerti. Just raise your hand and please clarify. So in Bain, I mainly work on strategy, performance improvement with digital companies as well as traditional companies that are thinking about going digital, right? So I'm very excited, senang sekali ya bisa join dengan teman-teman hari ini untuk ngambil sesi ini. Kalau kita lihat 2 minggu ke belakang ya, I think you have, Kiran has reviewed very quickly two main areas. One is just on business strategy. What is business strategy? What are the different components of it? And I think last week, point number 2 is mainly on customer. Mungkin kita sebelum mulai, saya ingin dengar dari teman-teman ya.
Is that a quick? Oh, I think it's it. Because my friend just mentioned it. Or
kalau lihat minggu lalu untuk customer, apa sih key takeaway-nya? Apa yang mungkin some of the yang interesting and insightful facts that you guys have taken away? Apa yang sudah dipelajari? Ya, silakan.
Okay. Thank you. So what I've learned from Mr. Kiran last week, the first one is like how to segment our target very well. It was like the way to segment them by, for example, to group or plot the customer by kind of types of their behavior, then their needs of taste and also their demographic as well, with to group or plot the customer by kind of types, the way to segment them by, for example, to group or plot the customer by kind of types of their behavior, then their needs of taste and also their demographic as well, with means that the base of segmentation, we will have a very clear data to run our strategy. That's it.
Terima kasih Pak Muhammad, that's a good summary. Ada lagi yang mau tambah?
10 sama dengan periode berapa? Enggak terlalu sulit. Sistematik yang mengerjakannya.
Besides customer segmentation, ada lagi? Atau udah pada lupa?
Please raise hand, mungkin share hal kecil juga nggak apa-apa ya, yang kemarin tentang Gojek.
Ada yang belajar NPS nggak?
NPS.
Net Promoter Score, itu apa?
Ayo. Yang udah mulai ngitung-ngitung, silahkan. Atau yang nggak dimengerti mungkin boleh juga ya.
Nah, mungkin ada pertanyaan ya yang kurang jelas minggu lalu.
Ayo, jangan malu-malu.
Iya. I hope I'm more friendly than Kiran, so you guys are not.
You both are friendly. Karena sebenarnya materinya kontekstual banget, sangat Indonesia, membahas Gojek, Tokped ya, teman-teman harusnya bisa relevan. Ada lagi kah? Belum
If
ada.
not, maybe let me try to recap a few things, right? And then kalau ada pertanyaan, silakan ya langsung aja tanya. Jadi untuk bisa lihat screen saya ya? Yeah, can you see my screen? Can ya? Okay. So this is, I think, over the last 2 weeks, what we have covered, right? Business definition, essentially, how do you define your market, right? What is your true offering, right, relative to other competitors? I think we also talk on company position, which is relative market share and growth share. I hope you remember the matrix, right? Typically what RMS and ROS tells you is the bigger you are, the more scale you have, right? So your profitability should always grow with your sales. Jadi kalau teman-teman ingat, it's the chart that has, if you can see my screen here, right? The bubbles, right? And this is RMS and this is ROS. So sorry, actually it's the other way, right? ROS and RMS. So as your market share increase, your return on sales or your profit should also increase. Yeah? Okay, I see some people nodding. Good. And then the other things that we talk about is customers, cost. We don't talk a lot. I think it's not very relevant. Competitors. This is really more on understanding who your competitors are, how big they are, right? Which customers are they going after, as well as your capabilities. So Kiran and I thought customers is actually really one of the more important things, right, that we need to understand, understanding your customer needs. And I think Muhammad Arif just mentioned about customer segmentation. So I thought what I would do is just quickly give you a bit of sense of give you a bit of a real life example, right? I think you guys talk about Gojek, you talk about Tokopedia, but here really what we are saying is customer segmentation is really to understand who are your target segments, right? There will always be different types of customers, but when you choose your target segment, you want to look at those that are most attractive, right? That can generate the highest profit, and also those that you can serve in a very differentiated way, right? Jadi mungkin kadang-kadang kan mungkin ada banyak customer segments. Mungkin as a company we can serve some customer better than the others, right? So thinking about for your you know, you guys have your startups, who are really the customers that you want to go after, that you are uniquely positioned to serve, right? But also have enough willingness to pay. So I want Pak Arif also mentioned, right, about need-based, behavioral, demographic customers, how do you segment them? I wanted to share very quickly an example, right? So this is segmentation for gardening company, right? I don't know if any of you are interested in that, but if you think about gardening, right, there are people who are skilled, right, who know very deeply about gardening. Mereka tahu pupuk apa, merek apa, ya, all the different parts. Ada juga mungkin yang lebih kurang ketahuan, tapi they are very interested, gitu, they want to learn, right? Or there are people who just do it because, you know, their neighbors do it, ya, jadi dia orang juga mau ikut-ikutan, padahal nggak gitu terlalu interested lah, cuman mau kelihatannya ada sedikit gardening knowledge, right? So understanding here the segment needs and values is the first step, right? And then you are for each of these, like you said, how interested are they? Right? What is actually, why do they want to do it? Do they really enjoy gardening, or they are, no, actually I don't really enjoy, I just want to, you know, ikut apa trend, ya, ikut trend. And also having a view of ability to pay, so how much are they willing to pay, and how much do they know, right? And a little bit of the demographics characteristics. If you have some of this, then what you can do is you can prioritize them, right, according to this matrix. One is the segment attractiveness, and also ability, like I said, to serve in a differentiated way, right? Segment attractiveness really is how much revenue they can generate, how profitable they are, and ability to serve is, do you have the right product offering for them? And so if you plot, you know, the different segments, you can see that, okay, I need to focus on these three buckets, right? These are the ones that I can serve best, and also they are willing to pay. And, you know, the rest, maybe they are there, but their potential is not big. Right, so based on that, you can come up with a segment strategy where you say, for each of my customer group, I will make sure I have a clear strategy on how to increase my value proposition to them, right, according to what they need, right? So how do you make sure you improve share of wallet, right? Share of wallet means how much are they spending with you versus other competitors, right? So for if your target group is people who are really committed to learning, right? How do you make sure you create more do-it-yourself sessions so that they can learn more, right? How do you improve their experience? How do you get their interest in all the different categories? So this is just an example of customer segment, which I think you guys have a good sense of, but I wanted to give a real example, so it helps you visualize, right? And I think for each of your startup, think about who your customer segments are, how willing are they to pay, right? What are they really looking for? And so are some of these demographic elements. Because today we will talk also a little bit about go-to-market, which is how do you reach these customers, right? And so for you to truly understand your customers, it's really the first step, right? Before you can go to them and sell their product. Mungkin saya pause di sini. Ada pertanyaan dari teman-teman?
Silakan teman-teman.
Jelas nggak ini customer segmentation? It's a very important concept ya.
Kalau mau dibawa ke project teman-teman yang memang belum bertemu value proposition-nya, bisa berdiskusi dengan Mbak Lina langsung. Belum ada jauh ini kan.
Ya, oke. Mungkin ini artinya jelas ya. Oke, so mungkin saya ada pertanyaan ya. Kalau misalnya untuk some of your startup, bagaimana teman-teman bisa lihat atau menggambarkan siapa sih customer segment untuk startup teman-teman? How would you develop a view of this, right? Let's say now you say, I have a product offering, right? You guys have some ideas. How do you think about which are my customer segments? And how do you know what they're interested in? How do you know how much they're willing to pay?
Kan ada yang mau sharing customer segmentnya? Ya,
mungkin
akan Akbar dulu mungkin.
All right. So I am Akbar from Post Harapan, and for the first one, I'm actually analyzing for my value proposition first. What makes my product is valuable for the other people, and for the first time, I was so my value proposition is that I want to preserve my fruit for 2 months in a distribution or around the country or maybe around the world. And then along the way, I just realized that if I use it for a locally, like say Indonesia, the product wouldn't work. Like there's no value in the product itself because the product actually work for a long distance distribution. And then I started to think, okay, so I think we should focus on export and import instead. And then along the way again, I just realized that, oh, maybe the customer itself, the segmentation itself is actually the suppliers in Indonesia, or maybe an exporter too that want to use our product. And that's why I actually segment our customer to suppliers and exporter that want to bring their food outside the country without an airplane, like because the airplane is even though an airplane is or air freight is very fast to go there, it's very expensive. It's like 10 to 15 times more expensive than shipping, and that's why I want to. The value is that you can distribute your fruit around the world with only a ship, even though it's a long time, but you can have a big quantity and still a good quality on the way.
Yeah, very good, very good. Is it Raffi?
Yes, Raffi will share.
Oke, terima kasih. Tadi, saya pakai bahasa Indonesia.
Ya, boleh.
Thank you. Jadi, tadi pertanyaannya gimana cara kita menentukan segmen customer di startup kita, kayak gitu. Nah, kalau menurut saya, yang pertama itu perlu ada pemahaman yang komprehensif tentang bidang yang sedang kita geluti di startup kita. Dan hal ini jelas itu kita bidangnya konstruksi. Nah, jadi perlu pemahaman yang lengkap dulu tentang bidang konstruksi. Nah, dari situ nanti kita muncul hipotesis apa saja yang kira-kira customer kita mau dan bagaimana kayak kemampuan mereka untuk membayar kayak gitu. Setelah itu baru kita lakukan market research, kita validasi apa yang sudah kita hipotesis awal yang sudah dibikin, baru nanti didapat kesimpulan apakah mereka ini emang segmen yang tepat untuk startup kita kayak gitu. Terima kasih.
Yes, that's very good. I like you start with a hypothesis and then you go to the market, right? And untuk memvalidasi hipotesis ini. And this is actually what I also want to share to you today, right? I want to make this practical, and so as you think about, mungkin Raffi ada hipotesis customer segment itu adalah kelompok A, kelompok B, kelompok C, right? And what you can do actually to validate your market research is to conduct a survey, right? A customer survey to validate whether your segmentation is the right one, right? And what you see on this slide here are examples, right, of what you can ask the customers, right? For example, do you know my product, right? Or do you know what is the solution to some of the problems that you have, right? Understanding what is their, when they purchase, what are the key drivers, right? Apa yang mendorong mereka untuk membeli brand A versus brand B, right? Dan juga apa untuk mereka penting, apa yang paling penting untuk mereka ya kalau mau membeli seperti service A or service B, right? And then you can also understand, if I'm comparing myself to my competitor, right? What does my customer think? Ya, maybe seperti dulu saya juga ada pernah look at customer segmentation study ya untuk Grab, Gojek segala ya. Jadi what you can ask is, kalau untuk Grab, what is the what do you like about Grab, right? What do you like about Gojek? And ini udah lama sih ya, ini udah 5-6 tahun lalu. What you hear, for example, is, actually untuk Gojek banyak orang bilang, saya suka Gojek soalnya ini anak bangsa. Ya, jadi the way you understand, actually my customer buys this because they like the positioning, the branding that I am, Gojek is an anak bangsa, right? And then you ask also about pricing, right? Bedanya apa dengan kalau Gojek sama Grab, yang mana lebih murah, dan maybe for some customers, price is not important to me. I'm willing to pay, right? But when I want a car, I need it in 3 minutes, right? Or some people are more, yes, promo, pokoknya maunya promo gitu ya. Jadi when you do a survey for your customers, you will realize, actually there's, different customers are looking for different things, and how do I make sure I, design my product to suit the customers that I want to go after. And this also, product strategy we will talk about later on go to market. And then you can look, you can see other things you can ask in a survey, right? It doesn't have to be a survey. It can also be a quick interview, for example, right? But the intent, as Pak Raffi said, is to validate which is whether you have the right group of segments of customers, whether you have the right value proposition for each of these customers. Mungkin saya pause di sini. Ada pertanyaan atau komen? Ada nggak mungkin teman-teman yang sudah melakukan customer research kayak begini?
Ayo, silahkan. Ada yang mau share customer research?
Actually, did I share my screen? This was the screen. Yeah, this is the topics I wanted to discuss. I mean, this is, some of the topics that you can ask your customers. Jelas semuanya? Okay.
Masih jelas.
Yeah, okay. good. And then the last one that we discussed, Kiran covered Net Promoter Score. Yes. Net Promoter Score. Okay. Okay.
Masih jelas.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And then the last one that we discussed, Kiran covered Net Promoter Score. Yes or no?
I think not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So once you have a group of customers, one of the things that you can also look at is how loyal is your customers to you. Jadi mungkin ada yang pernah dengar ya Net Promoter NPS ini untuk measure customer loyalty dan advocacy. The question is, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely is that you would recommend our company to a friend or colleague, right? If you put 10 or 9, you are a promoter, right? And if you put 7 and 8, they are just neutral, right? Yeah, okay, maybe. And then kalau misalnya lebih kurang dari 7 ya, 0 to 6, mereka tidak begitu suka lah. Jadi this is sometimes for companies also as they think about their customer strategy, they will look at how happy is their customer base, right? How loyal. And this is an what you can do once you have the data, right? Let's say you have 10 people yang bilang 9 to 10 mungkin 4 ya, yang bilang 0 to 6 maybe is 6, right? So for 40% minus 60%, that's your score, right? And you can compare your score with your other competitors, and the higher your percentage of promoters or net promoter score, the better, right? Because when your customers are loyal, it means that they will, and you can compare your score with your other competitors, and the higher your percentage of promoters or net promoter score, the better, right? Because when your customers are loyal, it means that they will stay longer with you, they will buy more. And the higher your percentage of promoters or net promoter score, the better, right? Because when your customers are loyal, it means that they will stay longer with you, they will buy more, and they will also recommend more. Jadi mereka bilang ke teman-teman, ini brand A actually is really good, right? So that's actually free promotion for you. Right, so you want to make sure that your customers are loyal, are happy, are satisfied with their experience. And NPS is one tool that you can use to measure their happiness with you. Okay? Ayah, ada pertanyaan Margarita ya?
Silakan.
Thanks for the opportunity. I want to ask something. In case there's a group of customers on NPS is detected as a detractor, but in real life they are most, we can call them, they are most active user or loyal customer of that company. So my question is, what is the impact of the company and how to react of that case? I can give some example like TikTok. Someday TikTok itu di ban di Indonesia kapan beberapa waktu yang lalu karena kontennya dan lain sebagainya gitu. Ada beberapa orang yang mengatakan bahwa TikTok itu saya tidak akan pakai TikTok seperti itu Kak. But sekarang kayak TikTok itu jadi sosial media yang cukup oke juga, banyak orang yang menggunakan gitu, dan mungkin di dalam situ ada orang yang sebelumnya itu bilang kalau saya tidak akan pakai TikTok, tapi saat ini dia menggunakan TikTok karena dia lihat value-nya ternyata bagus, tetapi dia tetap bertahan di sisi detractors-nya gitu. Jadi di depan dia bilang kayak saya tidak akan pakai TikTok, tapi dia bersembunyi itu sebenarnya di belakangnya dia menggunakan itu. Terima kasih Kak.
Yeah, it's a good question ya. Jadi kadang-kadang customers masih tetap pakai service itu even though they are detractor karena mungkin padahal nggak ada alternatif lain, Margarita, right? So even though they're not happy with the service, it's just like I think some of the people that also complain, right, about Facebook, right? But they're so used to it, right, that they still use Facebook even though they hate it, because that's where their network is, right? That's that's where they get all the news from. So I think in terms of if you have a company, right, that you see actually my biggest customer base are detractors, how do you use the data? It's a very good question. When you ask this question, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely is that you will recommend our company to a friend or a colleague? You will also ask why, right? So the person, whoever answers, will put 6 detractor, and then they will say why. And it's a free text response, right? They will say, harganya mahal. mungkin servisnya jelek, right? Oh mungkin what else? Tunggunya lama, right? Deliverynya lama. So what you can do is you can look at filter out, right, all my detractors, my pool of detractors customers, and I say I will categorize the reasons. What are the sources of unhappiness? Kenapa mereka nggak senang, right? Just if I'm TikTok, what I will do is I will do this survey and I will find out why. Begitu you can start to think about, okay, now if I know why they are not happy, then I can start to tailor my value product proposition to address some of them. Right, because my goal is to make them from a detractor to a promoter, right? Because the problem is, even though if sometimes customer-nya memang banyak, tapi detractor, there is always a risk if there is a competitor that they will go away, right? My sense is mungkin untuk TikTok masih belum ada alternatif ya, itu kan TikTok banyak banget videonya dan there is just no alternative. So even though sometimes you're not happy, you'll still stick with it. But I think it's a very good question, right? For your company is to think about, oh, why is my customer with me, right? Are they happy? Are they not? And why? Does that answer your question, Margarita?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kak. Sangat menjawab.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Teman-teman yang lain? Ada pertanyaan lagi? NPS ini banyak dipakai di perusahaan besar, nggak hanya startup ya, Mbak Lina.
Oh iya,
Jadi
kan traditional companies use this.
Ya, traditional company juga pakai. Jadi meskipun kalian nggak jadi founder startup, nantinya tetap harus menguasai ini gitu ya.
Iya.
Ini sangat membantu kita. Hasbi, silahkan.
Ya, terima kasih. Perkenalkan saya Hasbi. Ingin bertanya soal NPS ini. Kalau saya lihat sebetulnya berkorelasi dengan retention rate atau customer retention rate. Nah, itu pengen tahu aja, how do you think about that? Is it true or not?
Yes, it is true. I think this is an example. Actually, this is real data, right? What you see that if customers are your promoters, right, the attrition rate is lower, right? So what you see here is attrition rate, which is the opposite of retention rate, right? How much do you lose your customer? Untuk detractor, 100%, it's indexed, right? So for every 10 customers that leave, every 10 detractor customers, only 3 promoters leave, right? So retentionnya lebih banyak untuk promoter. Dan bukan saja untuk retention, tapi mereka juga akan membelinya lebih banyak. Jadi seperti Grab gitu ya. Dulu kan cuman ada, atau mungkin Gojek lah. Gojek kan dulu cuman ada the main service was the motorcycle service, right? If you are a happy customer, whenever they have new service, you will try it, right? Go massage, go live, go food. Because you have such a good experience, I will buy more from the company, right? And so not only you will retain, for promoters, the number of products that you buy will be more. If you think about mungkin your financial services ya, hari ini kalau teman-teman suka dengan bank yang teman-teman pakai hari ini, credit card-nya, mortgage-nya, loan-nya, itu semua dari satu bank. But if you don't like that bank, you will buy from other banks for the other products, right? So think of the basket, right, or the share of wallet will be higher if you are a promoter. And then the last one, as I mentioned, is recommendation atau referral, right? Itu Gojek lumayan, cobain gih, ya, and you get free promotion from your promoter customers.
Maybe a follow-up question. I mean, kalau saya sih sebetulnya saya memposisikan diri jadi customer. Terus katakanlah kan saya pelayanannya edutech ya. Jadi tiap habis kelas gitu kita kasih feedback form yang dimana ada persyaratan untuk dapat sertifikat or etc. itu harus mengisi feedback form ini. Nah, kalau misalkan saya jadi customer, bisa aja saya ngisinya ya katakanlah ngawur lah atau asal-asalan gitu. Is there any chance that it will happen? I mean, maksudnya ya gimana ya? Maksudnya apakah pernah ketemu sebuah kasus di mana NPS-nya tinggi nih, tapi kok customer retention rate-nya rendah atau ternyata datanya tidak sesuai dengan apa yang diharapkan gitu?
Good question. Pasti ada juga ya, tapi dari garis besarnya harusnya trennya kalau misalnya they are happy, they will stay with you. I think they are again when you ask the question, sometimes kan harus juga tanya apakah ada saran lain, right? And maybe if your question is more lebih spesifik ke retention, it's to ask the question a little bit in a different way, right? Which is apa yang mungkin menjadi dorongan untuk customer ini pindah, right, ke company lain, right? And then the other thing has to be that you can do is do an interview, right? So survey is one, mereka isi. Tapi kayak Hasbi bilang ya kadang-kadang mungkin dia orang asal-asal, soalnya pengen selesaiin aja gitu ya, udah gitu get on with the task. Sometimes what we can do is just call them for 5 to 10 minutes, right? And just understand from them how happy they are and how likely they are to stay. There are some exceptions where you say sometimes my happy customers will still leave for whatever reason, right? But as a trend, they should stay longer than the detractors.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hasbi. It's clear enough ya. Teman-teman ada pertanyaan lagi?
Saya juga ingin tahu mungkin untuk teman-teman apakah for your startup anybody has done customer research?
Yeah.
And what your
Harus juga sih. Ya
udah yang lakukan customer research, and what are the insights that are interesting for you?
Hafina, silakan.
Hai Kak,
Hai.
aku udah beberapa kali buat user research, and interesting part, aku ini customer research ke principle of sekolah Merdeka. Is it karena my startup is for service for a canteen, jadi kita nge-provide canteen application, so they don't need to become like a hassle canteen, and also bisa buat biar Gojek tapi versi kantin di sekolah aja gitu. And then kita ngobrol-ngobrol sama prinsipal dari sekolah Merdeka, dan emang feedbacknya bagus dalam artian mereka ngasih tahu cara-cara flow-nya yang emang bagusnya di sekolah-sekolah itu seperti apa, dan kita juga dapat insight adanya tier-tier. Jadi kita nggak bakal ngasih semua subscription tenantnya itu di satu range of harga, tapi kita bakal kategori semua sekolah-sekolah seperti international school, national, and also public school itu bakal kita beda-bedain, which is it's a really good insight for me, and also mentor juga sangat membantu dalam hal tersebut sih Kak, gitu.
Yeah. No, that's very good. Just understanding who the different customers are, and you have to tailor your services, right, according to, like you say, international school, the local school, and the willingness to pay as well will be different.
Yeah.
Very good.
I think that's it for the user research, but I think for now we're going to dig into the customer research, because the customer research is going to be within the not elementary, it's going to be junior high school until senior high school students, but yeah, the implication is going to be different with the survey. We're going to have like an interview session with them, so we can have a deeper connection with the customer also.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, focus group discussion, you get a lot more details, right?
Yeah.
And things you cannot capture on the survey. That's great. I'm very happy to hear some of you are doing this already.
Thank you, Alvina from Kantin. Anyone to share more? Kalau belum berprogres banyak, tapi saya yakin udah banyak yang user research sih, karena itu tugas dari subjek yang lain juga.
Yeah. So I think what we discussed today, right? When you need to understand for your customers not only what they need and what they want, so that you can tailor your product to them, but also once they are your customer, how happy are they, right? And how do you continue to deliver customer experience that is positive to them, right? How do you understand what are the pain points today that they have with the company and how to solve it, right? In the end, the customer wins, right? The more what we see is the most successful companies are the companies that what we say customer centric, right? They are obsessed about their customers, right? So you want think about I don't know if you guys have heard Zappos, which is the shoe e-commerce company in the US, right? Itu sudah dibeli dengan Amazon, but for Zappos it was all about customer experience, right? Making sure that whatever the service they have, they make their customer the happiest group of people. Okay, cool. So with that, let me move to today's topic. I know we discussed more about customers. I think it's an important topic. I want to make this a bit more sort of interactive, right? So it's a whiteboard here. I want to talk about this is a kind of the whiteboard that we will use. I want to talk about go-to-market. What do you understand from go-to-market? What is go-to-market?
Hasbi, meeting customer. Mungkin boleh bisa jelaskan, Hasbi, meeting customer.
Yeah, I think go to market. Sebenarnya nggak tahu bener atau enggak. Cuma sekilas pertama kali yang ada kata-kata yang muncul itu ya bertemu dengan customer itu sendiri. Jadi kita bertanya, kita melihat langsung atau kita bertanya langsung ke customer kita bagaimana soal pelayanan kita, karena kalau dari laporan tim itu kan biasanya tidak seakurat ketika kita bertemu langsung dengan customer kita. Mungkin itu sih kalau dari saya.
Yeah, so you go to your customers to hear what they have to say. Go to your customers to tell them about your product, right? You go to your customers as well to deliver your service to them. Right, so all of you have a product that you're trying to sell, right? Or maybe you already have the product, but you are releasing your product into a new market, or maybe you are targeting a new consumer group, right? Whenever you have a new product that you want to launch, right? Or you want to launch to a new group of people, you need a go-to-market plan, right? So a go-to-market plan is really to say, this is my product, these are my customers, how do I connect the two dots, right? So when you say go-to-market plan, what you need to have, one is your value proposition, right? What am I really selling in my product? What is the experience that me as a customer will need to go through, right? To acquire your product and your service. And so this is really the plan. How do I make sure I acquire as many customers as possible? Right? What is important in a go-to-market is, one, how can I get to my customers the fastest? Right? So today, you have for Gojek, for example, for Grab, what was the strategy they took to make sure that every one of us can quickly download the app? Right? It was a mixture of marketing, but also how easy it was to download the apps. Right? So it's not just marketing, right? Because marketing is a part of that, right? Typically, it's how you think about ongoing marketing strategy for your products or services, like advertising, promotion, right? Public relations, digital marketing, direct sales, events, right? But go-to-market is more specific for your specific product or service to your specific customer group. So it's important in terms of time that you reduce the time that it can go to market. You need to think about cost as well, right? So how do you lower the cost? Have you guys heard customer acquisition cost, right? CAC. That is the second. The third is experience, right? How do you wow your customers when they first download your app? How do you wow your customers when they first make the payment? Every single step, right? Your customer experience has to be optimized. So those are, for me, kind of the three things you want to think about, right? Time, cost, and experience. So what do you have in a go-to-market plan? One, you want to make sure that you have good product strategy, right? Which all of these things need to be coherent, right? Then you want to have a channel strategy. You want to have fourth, a market strategy. And lastly, as I mentioned, customer experience. Right, so there are 4 elements as you think about go-to-market plan, right? So product strategy, number 1, what differentiates your product from your competitors, right? How do you communicate, right, that message? So if today there are already alternatives, how do you communicate this is what is different, this is what differentiates my product from others, right? Here is also not just messaging, but also how do you think about pricing, right? Do you do you make it free, or do you provide promotions first, right? Or is there a partner you can work with for cross promotion? So a lot of elements here, right? One is your value proposition, your pricing, your promotion, and this is really thinking about how can you make your pricing, your promotion, and this is really thinking about how can you make sure that there is a clear purpose and reason for your product's existence. Can someone maybe give me an example? I'm sure you have thought about it. For your startup, what is your product strategy? What is your key differentiation? Any example? Sebelum ke customer, we need to know, right? What are we selling? What is the differentiation?
You want to share?
Can I share from my startup? So please correct me if I'm wrong, because nggak tahu karena produk to me is really related with customer. So what is my differentiation from another startup is I have been do benchmarking with the competitor, and I found sedikit celah yang bisa startup saya masukin.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of startup. For your information, my startup is academic mentoring class.
Yeah.
A lot of startup banyak sekali yang menggelar kelas untuk persiapan kerja. It's like Clean's expert class. For example, my competitor Excel Indonesia from Universitas Indonesia. Dan startup saya mengambil customer yang mereka lupakan, yaitu mahasiswa yang ada di semester 1 sampai 5, yang dimana mereka fokus ke mahasiswa akhir yang udah siap untuk bekerja. Nah, di startup saya, kami ingin memiliki produk yang nanti tujuannya adalah mengembangkan potensi the students that is in first until 5th semester itu tadi. Jadi, we build product that can help them to maximize their potential in a college. Itu sih dari saya.
Yes, good. I think that it's very clear, right? What your differentiation is relative to others.
Thank you, Arif, for sharing.
Yes. Oh, hilang ya ini screen-nya. Okay, so I think Arif shares a very good vision of his product, right? What is the purpose and why his product exists? And I think when you think about product strategy, what is important is also to work with, closely with the product development team to envision what is the product, right? And also what is the product roadmap based on the vision, right? So you will have a view in 3 months. This is what akan meluncurkan feature apa, ya? In 6 months, in 1 year. But what's important is for you to know what is your vision for the next, let's say, 3-5 years, right? And then you can break it down slowly. This is also important, right? Because we are living in a time where everything is evolving, right? The features that you think will be important for 2 years' time, maybe it will change, right? The things that you think, oh, maybe not so important, maybe one day you realize it's important. So planning carefully what I want my product to be, right, is important. And then as I mentioned, how do you think about pricing, right? So pricing and promotion, because this is the way you can make sure that your customers are have low enough barrier, right, to try your product for the very first time, right? If you think about your very first time trying a service, right? The barrier, right? The barrier means not just pricing, but also how you install it in your app, how you sign up. All of this has to be very, very easy. Yeah. Have any of you thought about how you think about pricing?
Ada yang pernah membahas pricing atau udah kepikiran produknya?
Ya.
Pricingnya akan seperti apa? Silakan Hasbi.
Iya, karena maaf yang ngomong terus. Iya, jadi kalau dari kami kemarin nanya juga pertanyaan yang sama ke Malcolm di sesi yang lain, dan jawabannya adalah kita harus tahu posisi kita dulu gitu. Jadi karena kami di educational technology, kami harus tahu kompetitor kami itu harganya berapa gitu, dan fasilitas yang mereka tawarkan untuk itu apa. Jadi apakah kami ada di posisi murah gitu ya, atau fasilitas dikit dengan harga yang murah, apakah yang menengah?
I'm so stressed. Maybe that's it for now. Remember guys, stay funky. Stay don't stress. Love you all. Goodbye.